In 1813, after the Americans had defeated the British at the Battle of Lake Erie and the Battle of the Thames, the peninsula was vulnerable and ripe for pillaging. Members of the militia were torn between harvesting their crops and defending the crown. Fanshawe 1812 is an annual reenactment coordinated by the Royal Scots Grenadiers.
What the reenactors love about Fanshawe Pioneer Village is that it's perfectly positioned to present the story of 1812, the battles along shorelines, the battles in cornfields, the battles inside small villages. 1812 was not just the big structured battles. There was the marauding across the countryside.
There was a large series of skirmishes that took place in Western Upper Canada to try to limit the ability of the local population to supply the British Army with cattle, feed. So the Americans would land troops on shore, go into the nearest settlements and try to deplete the supply, burning mills, just killing and destroying the cattle. The villagers would be in terror. You know, they knew that if the Americans advanced into their farm, they would lose everything.
And many did. Local militia saved John McCrae's home, but graffiti and small cannon shot remain to give evidence of its occupation. And an archaeological site and a museum housing the artifacts discovered is all that remains of the original settlement of Fairfield. Founded by Moravian missionaries and their native followers, it was looted and put to the torch. In Walkerville, François Baby, a French-Canadian, had his home commandeered by both sides of the conflict. First by the Americans, who made him a prisoner and set up an encampment in the grounds.
He built these big moats and fortifications around three sides of the house. This house actually became sort of linked to Fort Lernu across the river, which was the Detroit Fort.
It was a short-lived occupation, but when they left, the British General Brock arrived and took possession. Today it houses the Windsor Community Museum. Houses document the past in intriguing ways.
I've been investigating ghost stories in the area of Chatham-Kent, primarily because this area is rich in history, and with the settlement along the Thames dates back to a couple of hundred years.
London's Idlewild Inn was the first house to host backgammon parties, and its dining room was the scene of dances where British officers met young, marriageable ladies. And had London been chosen the capital of the colony, the site upon which Eldon House now sits was designated for the Governor's home. It's the oldest remaining house in the City of London and built by John Harris, who'd been surveying the shoreline of the Great Lakes for the British Admiralty when war broke out.
And during that trip along the coast shorelines, he met Amelia Ryerson, who was only 17 to his 34. She took one look at him and decided this was the man for her. And they married, and they had 10 children.
All these homes, pioneer villages, churches and cemeteries remain as a testimony to the hard-working settlers and new immigrants. After the war, they rebuilt their lives. And thanks to the vision of that hard taskmaster, Colonel Tom Talbot, and his long, straight roads, together they opened up the interior of southwestern Ontario. For more information, visit our website on topoftheworld.net.